Hi, my name is Nora. Last time we looked at how to create a dollhouse out of a cardboard box, and you can see mine right here. Today we're going to work on making our box look less like a box and more like a house by painting and decorating. So the first step is to look around your house and see if you have any paints. The best kind of paint to use is a water-based paint like an acrylic paint, because if you accidentally get a little bit on your clothing or a piece of furniture, it cleans up more easily than an oil-based paint. So once you found a paint that you like or a combination of colors, then go ahead and think about what part of the house you want to paint. Now, when I looked for paints, I could only find some small ones. So I'm not going to be able to paint my entire house, but I have a solution, and I'll talk about that when we get to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is paint the roof. And I want my roof to look as though it has shingles on it, which are those small tiles all across the roof. And so those are kind of usually a gray or a brownish color, or brownish gray. So I'm going to go ahead and mix some paints. Now, you don't have to make your house look at all realistic. You can really use any colors, any combination of colors that you want. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the caps of these paints. And if you've noticed that your paint has dried out at all, you can go ahead and add just a little bit of water and mix it in, and that should help make it a little bit more fresh and ready to use. So I'm going to use a white paint, a brown paint, and a black paint. And here I just started mixing to see how those will look together. So here I have a little piece of cardboard that I'm going to use as a palette. And that's just a place for me to mix together the colors. It's also a good idea to have some water. So I have some water here, and that can help both the mixing of the paint and cleaning of your brush. Let's see how that looks. I like that pretty well, but I think I'm going to add a little bit more brown. Oh yeah, I like that color. It might go a little faster if I use a larger brush. I think I could use a little more paint. Right, so you can see that there's some variation in the colors, and I actually like the way that looks, so I'm going to leave that. And I'm going to see how it looks when it dries, but I like the fact that you have some different parts that are lighter and darker and gives a little bit more texture to the roof. So, as I mentioned before, I don't have a lot of paint. So instead of painting the sides of my house, I'm actually going to use a different strategy. So what I do have a lot of is tissue paper. I use it for gift wrapping. And so I found several pieces of a color that I like. Just make sure that you have at least 4 pieces of the color, 4 full sheets of the tissue paper, to make sure you can fully cover your house. And then again, if you have multiple different colors you want to use, that's completely fine too. You can have a rainbow colored house, a house that is ombre, where it changes from light to dark or dark to light, going up the side. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this, and there's really no set way. So do it however it makes you happy. But once you find a color or colors that you like, what we're going to do is we're going to glue the tissue paper to the house. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a kind of glue called Modge Podge. It's a good craft glue. You don't have to use Modge Podge. You can definitely use any kind of craft type glue. For example, Elmer's mixed with some water would work perfectly well. And there's a lot of varieties you can choose. But I'm going to use some Modge Podge, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my strips of paper are the right size to fit one side of my house. And once I do that, I will attach it. So the first thing I'm going to do is clean up my workspace. So we'll remove the paint to a slightly different area, make sure all the containers are closed so I don't accidentally have a spill. And then I'm going to rinse my brushes. I'm not going to fully clean them yet. I will do that at the end. But one thing that I've seen people do is dip their brushes in the water and leave it. And that's actually not a good idea. The brushes, the hairs or the bristles of the brushes are glued here. And if you leave them soaking in water for a long time, it can actually start to wear away that glue and the bristles can come out. So a better idea is just to rinse the brushes off in your water. Again, you don't need to completely clean them, but just rinse them off so they're not soaked in paint, and then leave them lying flat like that. Okay, now I have my Modge Podge or my glue, and I have my tissue paper. So I'm going to use another scrap of cardboard to put the glue down. And then I'm going to, as I mentioned, make sure that the tissue paper is the correct size. So I'm going to gently pull it up to the top and then lay it flat here. And as you can see, I have a little extra, so I am going to, with that extra piece, I'm going to cut that off. And so just kind of gently mark it with a pencil and a ruler. And it's better to leave a little bit of extra space on the paper rather than to cut it short. So when in doubt, cut more, leave more tissue paper than you think you need. Okay, now I'm going to put Modge Podge. Kind of looks just white glue. And then go ahead and grab whether you want to use a brush or something like this. And the interesting thing about Modge Podge is you can actually paint it on over. It will give it a little bit of a sheen. You can also paint it under, especially also if you're using a different kind of glue, and stick it that way. But if it is a kind of craft glue that you can paint directly on to the tissue paper, and it will, if you want this walls of your house, the outer exterior of your house to be a little bit shiny, that is a fun thing to do. What I like about the tissue paper method is it gives some texture to your house. Really creates a more interesting look than flat paper. But you can also create visual texture by using different colors of paint mixed together. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing on the back and the other side of the house, and then touch up any parts that need to be touched up. All right, let's see how that looks. Pretty good. So I'm going to go back and touch up the corners. These parts here. Just going to go underneath with a little more glue and fold that over. If you want your house to not have any of the cardboard showing through, right now mine has a little bit, you can see a little bit of the cardboard underneath, you could do a second layer of tissue paper. You could also get an interesting effect by doing multiple different colors of paper. There's a lot of cool things you can do. I forgot to measure this before, but it's okay because I can also measure after the fact that I already put the glue on. I can just line this up under the glue carefully and then cut off any extra. You can really do it in either order. Okay. Because you're working with a box, you can always tuck any extra paper underneath. And the nice thing about scraps of tissue paper, as long as they're somewhat, not tiny little pieces, you can still reuse these in gift wrapping or wrapping a very small gift. So you don't have to throw them away. And again, I'm going to touch up the side here, this corner, by just laying one piece of tissue paper over the other, making sure they're tightly together. And over here, my edge is a little bit ragged on this side because I didn't cut it very neatly. So I'm just going to touch that up too. And once I have all the parts glued, I might notice that there's some parts that are coming undone, in which case I'll just go back, redo them. But once I have that glued, you can see that I have a house that now has three sides that are a pale mint green and a kind of grayish brown roof. So I am ready to decorate the interior.